everyone. My name is Martin. I'm the Director of Marketing at Evolven, and I'll be your host for this session. Evolven 6.0, our greatest release ever. I'm happy to have on today's session Sasha Gillenson, Evolven's founder and CEO. Sasha was a top guru at Mercury and has advised numerous Fortune 500 companies on technology and process optimization. Hello, Sasha. How are you doing today?
Hi, Martin. I'm doing very well. It's great to be here.
Great. So, before we begin, I'd like to welcome all of our attendees and thank you for joining us. This update should be very exciting. Now, let's quickly go over today's agenda. Sasha will highlight the new developments with our latest release, and then he'll go into a live demo. We'll follow it up with a Q&A, so keep passing in those questions throughout the session, and we'll get to those at the end. So, without further ado, I'd like to pass this over to Sasha to present Evolven 6.0.
Okay, thank you, Martin. And I would like to start with a very quick recap of what actually our customers, you, are doing today with Evolven, and what we want to support with greater efficiency, simplicity, and intelligence in the upcoming release. So first of all, Evolven is used in production support area, and the way it's used there is to cut a number of incidents and reduce mean time to resolution significantly. With Evolven, our users know what actually changed, and they can identify high-risk changes before they actually cause an incident. So be proactive and prevent incidents. They can also use Evolven to correlate changes that could be a potential root cause of an incident to accelerate time to resolution. Another group that is benefiting from Evolven is the DevOps teams. And DevOps teams are using Evolven to achieve faster and error-free deployments. And you can actually use Evolven in this space in a number of scenarios. First of all, to ensure that infrastructure is ready for the deployment of an application update. You need to know what actually was deployed, not just what was planned to be deployed, or what packages you actually move through your deployment automation platform, but what are the actual changes that happened as a result of the deployment in your environment. You can ensure that what was deployed is actually matching what was tested. So all the changes that you are introducing in your environment were verified before in a lower environment, and you can keep maintaining consistency across environment in spite of the pace and the amount of changes. And the last but not least is the ITSM space, where Evolven is used to increase productivity. And with Evolven, our users are actually detecting unauthorized changes. They validate accurate implementation of approved changes. So again, knowing that what was approved, that what was implemented. They also can maintain standards and consistency within the environment by reporting or drift or deviation from a golden baseline or from a reference environment. So how our technology actually works, and these principles are monitoring tools, getting contextual information from service desk like change requests, from CMDB like service maps, deployment automation tools, getting information about the deployment, as well as symptom information coming from monitoring tools, alerts, errors, anomalies, and so on. Getting all this information into our analytics engine and applying a combination of machine learning, statistic, and heuristic algorithms, we can answer three key questions. What actually changed? What is different? Which of the changes could be a root cause of an incident you are investigating? And also, which of the changes can cause an issue, risky, and can cause an issue in the future? Potential performance, availability, or even security issue. So, with this, what actually we are doing in Evolven 6.0. This is our, I would say, the greatest release up to this date, and we believe that change is the root of all evil. Change is the major contributor to the incidents and problems in IT operations. However, getting information about the change is not enough. There are so many changes. There is so much information. So it's very essential to prioritize this information and to give our users a clear view of which of the changes need to be dealt with, need to be handled, both again in proactive and reactive scenarios. Our goal is to actually give you information in such a way that it requires minimal interpretations, that you can easily understand the data, and we don't introduce the overhead to your day-to-day operational processes. And hence, we implemented a major UI redesign, as well as adding new capabilities in our analytics. We actually were granted a patent to the new mechanisms that we have introduced to generate the insights automatically out of the box. Plus, we are providing now an ability to describe the changes, provide information in natural language, so that, again, an IT specialist can easily understand what happens in the environment. With that, let me switch to the demo so that I can actually show you how do this new capabilities look in the new version. So we see here a console of Evolven 6.0. And this is the first screen, which is essentially a list of the tasks that Evolven users coming from different areas, as we mentioned, as the DevOps, production support, and ITSM, can use to start exploring the data and finding the answers to the key questions they might have to manage their environment. And let's start from a scenario when I am a production support engineer that actually need to investigate an incident that was reported, a performance issue in my environment. So one of the things that I can do here is actually to look at the high-risk changes that happened before the incident was reported. Just for the sake of the demo, I will switch to the task that I already saved so that I can investigate the incident. I will look at all the high-risk changes in on-demand load application for a certain period of time before the incident has happened. Let me just open the data. And now the Evolven is generating the insights for the changes that were detected before the incident. So first of all, you can see that analysis screen has changed completely. We have a couple of areas in the screen. So before I continue with the use case, let me explain the new user interface. First of all, you see here a change map. We automatically break down information by the technology components that you have in your environment. In this case, we look at the on-demand load application, as well as the application layers. We see here front-end, middleware, back-end, and infrastructure. This structure can come up, generated automatically by Evolven, as well as by looking into your logical environment to get the structure from your logical environment. And if it's a sufficient structure, we'll use it to present changes in the change map. So you can see now at a glance how the high-risk changes are actually distributed across your environment. You can see that you have one change in IIS as a front end, you have 4 high-risk changes in middleware, and you have also a number of changes in backend between Microsoft SQL database and Windows, and also changes on the infrastructure level. At the top right corner, you see the timeline that presents you the changes that Evolven has detected, the vertical bars, also aggregated when available, with the data coming from the service desk. We can see here a ServiceNow request, from deployments, automatic deployment that was executed to introduce these changes, as well as when available, we actually can see the alerts. Like in this case, we can see an alert coming from Splunk about the low disk space. But we are investigating the incident that was reported about the performance performance issue. So one thing that I will start with, I will look into the insights. I go to the box below the timeline, and I will actually look for investigation insights. And here, Evolven, that's another capability of Evolven Analytics that I have mentioned, is actually automatically trying to understand what happened in the environment. We can see here that there was some authorizations that were modified, and Evolven thinks that you need to look at them because this group authorization were consistent before, now they are not. There are some changes in the file, and we also can see that there is an update in a connectors configuration that actually violates the policy. Let's look at this one. So right now, you see that Evolven brought on the left side a table of changes that match the insight that was generated by the analytics. We have two changes, and you can see also now that in terms of the change description, again, we switched to the native language description that very clearly explains what the change was. In the file connectors in Tomcat server, we see that the connector with port 8900, for this connector, parameter accept count was decreased. And we can see that this was done inconsistently. Only one of the servers was decreased. The rest of comparable servers still stayed on this value that is 500. We also see that parameter compression for this connector was updated to off. Both of these changes can contribute to the performance issue. One of the things, one of the things that we can also analyze, we can see, why Evolven believes that these are high-risk changes. Let's start with the first one. By clicking on the risk score, which was 85, I can actually see now what was the risk tree, what was the decision tree that led Evolven to decide that this is a high-risk change. We can see that Evolven actually says that this is a high-risk change because it's a new inconsistency. The configuration was consistent before, someone broke this consistency, and therefore we see that this is a high risk. For the second change, if we look for the reasons, we see actually that this is a not compliant change. That means that we actually, one of the IT experts actually took time and defined a specific policy of how the Tomcat server should be configured, and the change actually broke this policy. We can see, what policy looks like. We actually see that for compression parameter, the expectation was that compression will be turned on. This is our default setting for Tomcat, and that's what we want to ensure that is a desired state of our environment. And the change actually broke this policy. So from that point, when detecting the changes, that definitely can contribute for performance issues that we were investigating. We can either, mark them, tag them as ones to be fixed, and we can report them. With them, we can report them, the changes, to the relevant stakeholder to fix them. We can actually generate a report and send the changes. We can, for example, do the change summary report. Or we can open this change, we can open a ticket for the change in the service desk requesting change remediation. So what we saw here was the whole use case, that is, starting from a task screen where we actually just asked for a task to view high-risk changes for on-demand loans for the time period before the incident. We saw the breakdown. We saw the breakdown of the changes through the automatic change map. We looked at the insight.
You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
So we saw the insight that generated explains the changes, as well as we saw the actual changes and natural description for these changes, and we were able to identify the reason for the risks in these changes and report the changes to the stakeholders or open a ticket in the service desk. Now, in this case, we didn't have alert. It just was based on the information about that as an IT operations specialist, I had an information about the incident. So I went to a specific time period before the incident to investigate the changes. But let's say that I actually have a specific alert that I want to investigate. Like in this case, we have an information coming from Splunk. There is a low disk space. A low disk space situation on a particular server. So one of the things that we can do, we can click on this alert, and Evolven will correlate the changes with the alert, and will give you, will show you the insights that explain the changes. Like one of the interesting insights here is that we have a logging properties updated. Again, that some things that violated some standard policy that we have defined. So let's look at this. And we see here that a parameter of logging level was updated to debug, which means that our application is sending out much more information about all the transactions and about all the activity to the log file we will keep on the disk, which definitely can explain the situation with a low disk space. We also see that there was an update in application, and this update was actually in a particular jar file, was upgraded to a new version, and is inconsistent with the rest of the application servers. So again, it might be that there is certain change in applications, the way it uses the disk, but also it's inconsistent. That's why we bring this information. But if we look at the risk level, actually, we'll see that our change of debug level is much higher in terms of the risk than the upgrade of the application file. So this is a way, again, to very quickly correlate an alert or an incident or an issue with the changes that cause them, with a very clear explanation of what the changes actually mean, aggregation of this information through the insight, then a clear description of the changes in the change table, with the ability to see the reasons of the risk through viewing of the risk tree. That was a reactive scenario. Now let's look into the situation where we want to be proactive. We can actually create a dashboard where we keep KPIs based on the changes for different applications, servers, groups of servers, technologies, again, depending on your role and the type of information you want and need to see. In this case, we are looking again at all the changes in on-demand load application. And one of the things that I want to do, I see that there are high-risk changes detected in my dashboard, so I want to dive again into analysis and understand why do I have high-risk changes and what they are. So again, Evolven is loading the data, it's calculating the insights for the data. And we can see now that we are in a high risk, we have 44 high risk changes. Again, we can see the distribution of the changes over the timeline and other activities coming from service desk and deployment automation tool that were driving these changes. But one of the things that we want to look now is we want to look at the proactive insights. Okay, we just want to understand, what actually happened. And here we can see that actually we had some high risk and inconsistent changes coming from a number of service requests. One of the things that we can see here is that there was a CR4322 reported to ServiceNow that actually resulted in a number of high-risk changes. So we can look at the changes, and we can break it down deeper to understand actually what happened in this set of changes. So when we click on Filter More, additional grouping is introduced, and the system decided, Evolven decided to show you the split by the types of the service. So we see that within the application, actually, most of the inconsistent changes were made in pre-production environment, so they kind of maybe worries are less than production, but still want to understand why there are so many changes. So we can do it again with pre-production changes, filter more, and we can see from where the changes are coming. And we can see that most of the changes are actually focused on MS SQL servers, something called PRD SQL 003. Again, we can pick the insight, and we can see what are the changes that were created inconsistently within the part of the change request that we are analyzing right now. We can see here that there is like a quite changes that are quite concerning. Like for example, for a particular resource pool, we decreased a parameter max CPU percent to 50, and that's very different from others where we actually had it at 100%. So it can definitely impact our performance. So one of the things I would be doing, I would be asking, for example, a specialist of what actually, why do we have a reduction of CPU max CPU with server only? Okay, so we can send this note to the specialist so that again the DBA, for example, will tell us why actually if this change is justified or not, and based on this you can proceed to request a remediation or accept this change as something that DBA is aware of, and that's a desired change. So again, in a way that we believe are very easy to understand, we took you from an information about high-risk changes to specific insight saying that which change request created this issue, so who actually implemented the change request, to the automatic breakdown of where the issues, where the high-risk changes were detected, so that you can actually communicate to the relevant stakeholders and request them either to clarify the changes or to remediate them. Now, one of the other things that I would like to show is new types of changes that we started to analyze and report on, which are related not to configuration, not to application files, but actually to the workload. We started to look at the data coming from monitoring tools and from other analysis tools about the metrics of performance and availability, and translate them into the changes in behaviors that we can analyze in terms of the risk as we analyze any other type of changes, including configuration changes. So let me go and bring the information about the workload, like examples of workload changes. Again, Evolven is cranking the data. And now we can see here, we can do a look right now on all of the changes in application on-demand loans. And we can see here that we have, in terms of the components here or types of the data, we see here data coming, workload data that we collected from Splunk. Okay, we have here some 6 changes coming from Splunk. So we can, again, select this particular type of data, particular type of changes. We can actually see here that Evolven detected considerable behavior change in system performance summary. So let's focus on this performance behavior changes. And right now we can see that we saw an increase in CPU for a certain period of time, as well as increases in network activity. But the CPU increase is estimated as a high risk, and the network activity is a lower risk, 50. We can also see why this actually was decided, that one is critical and one is not, because in CPU we observed severe changes in workload behavior. So let's start and see why it actually happened. Let's click on the value and see what the explanation is. Here we see a value graph, and we see the blue line. The CPU was actually pretty low for a certain period of time until we saw the first jump in the CPU, and then the second jump that left us above 90% for relatively long period of time. So that's clearly an anomaly, a change in the way the CPU was behaving before. And it's pretty significant, going from a negligible CPU utilization to 90+% for a period of time. So that's why we speak about a severe change in the workload behavior. Now let's do the same for a network change. And we see here that actually a slightly different situation. We see here that network utilization peaks at a certain period of time. It could be a batch execution, it could be some application execution, some data data upload, but we see that every few days we have a peak in network. What happens also is that on the last day we saw a peak, but it was really small. It's actually not matching the level of the peaks that we have in the earlier days. So what we see is that the change of the, it's a change in the behavior. It's a smaller peak, a smaller utilization. Therefore, we announce this as a risky change. But at the same time, it's not an increase of the network utilization. It's a decrease of one. That's why we say it's actually yellow risk, not the red risk, because it's not increasing utilization, but decreasing it. So in this way, again, we extended the types of the changes that we are able to analyze, adding, to the family of the changes that were already supported, workload changes, which are looking into behavioral analysis of performance and availability data collected from other existing monitoring tools. The last but not least capability that I would like to show is a new dimension in analysis of the changes, which looks at actual value of the change, detecting anomalies, essentially trying to find, the mistakes of manual changes, the fat finger type of mistakes, and by looking exactly into what was changed and how it was changed. So let's again open another data that will show us an example of value anomaly. So let's see here, we see here an anomaly, and we see that a particular, anomalous change was attributed to disabling automatic updates in Windows. So let's see why actually it's considered to be an anomaly. Let's pick the change. Look at the anomaly graph. And that's the reason, that's kind of explanation of this anomaly detection. We see that majority of the Windows servers in the environment, which again we looked at this automatically, found comparable or similar servers. In this cases, the Windows updates parameter is enabled. The Windows is enabled, enabling the automatic updates. However, our current value is disabled, which is different from the majority of the servers. Therefore, we say that it is anomalous. That can apply, to the different types of anomalies. Changes, from range of value, for example. Changes in type of value. We can see that, we can see here that we look at the anomaly of the actual value across the multiple servers. We look also at the anomaly of delta that was introduced. So for example, if you're changing a value typically from 1 to 10, 1 to 20, and suddenly you change it to 1 to 1,000, it also will be a kind of value anomaly that will increase the risk of the change. So we are continuously expanding the analytics capabilities of Evolven by adding other dimensions and other algorithms that can identify the changes that are risky, that can essentially cause a problem in the future by looking at the different aspects of the change over the time and across the environments. So just to summarize, these new capabilities, what we saw that Evolven has now a central screen where you have a collection of tasks that you can easily access that will lead you to the data that answers the questions that you might have, like, what are my high-risk changes, what are my unauthorized changes, what are my, manual changes, how environments are comparing, how environments are consistent. So, for example, let's take, the one task that we didn't really go through is environment consistency. It's also a new type of activity that allows you easily to see what are the mismatches, misalignments in your environment. So let's go and say, click next. So the next question that Evolven asks you is to select the logical environment where you will be looking for inconsistency. I will go to our application that we use for this demo, the on-demand loans. And I want actually to see, that I'm coming on Monday, I had a weekend of maintenance, and I want to see that my middleware still remains consistent. So I pick my middleware servers, I click next, and I want to see inconsistencies for any time. I want to see what are overall inconsistencies in my environment. I press on go, and here is the result. I can see that there are actually 9 inconsistencies, none of them high risk, they're all yellow, medium risk. We can see that the inconsistencies are distributed between Tomcat and Windows. And we also see that there were new inconsistencies added last week, 3. So that's the new stuff that was added by maintenance. And we also have the older ones, the inconsistencies that already existed in my environment. I didn't fix them. So I can actually click on the last week. That's the new ones that I want to avoid and see what are these inconsistencies. So we can clearly see that there is one server, and we can see that it's a Tomcat 001, where we see a set of values is actually different from the rest of the servers. So again, having this information, I can go and immediately ask, to remediate to complete the deployment, to remove this inconsistency, to ensure that the results of the deployment are consistent across all comparable servers. Now you can see again that this task was done essentially out of the box. We didn't ask any question other than what environment you want to analyze, and matching the servers, looking for inconsistencies, prioritizing them, grouping them together. It all was done automatically by Evolven. And that's the idea, to create the tasks that you can easily follow to get the data, to get the answers to your questions. So again, we looked at the tasks in the central console. We can actually, we looked at the analysis where, we saw the change map, insights, and description of the changes in the native language. We saw the new type of the changes, workload changes. As well, we saw the new dimension, new algorithm of analysis, which focuses on analyzing the value, the actual change in the value over time and across the servers, across the environments. Martin, with that, we conclude the demo. Are there any? Let's open the floor for the questions.
Okay, thank you, Sasha. Yes, we've got some great feedback and comments. First question, are the risk configurations delivered out of the box, or do these need to be configured manually?
And it's an excellent question, because in the previous versions there was actually some fine-tuning that was required for the risk model. In this case, no. It's actually our risk tree, our risk configuration is delivered out of the box, and you can fine-tune the relevance of the data. You can actually define, again, which things are critical for you by using things like policies, for example. But the risk tree itself that you saw actually in the view when I clicked on the risk score, it's something that the decision tree is provided out of the box. Martin, hold on. I have actually here, with me also a number of customers watching this live. So a question here. When is it available? That's an excellent question about when is this available. So it's a very, very important point. So we started the beta program now, where we have a number of customers that signed for the beta program and started to use the 6.0 in their environment. We give this essentially 2 months for collecting the feedback and fixing, whatever findings are, and we will be releasing a general availability on the 31st of March.
Any new changes in dashboards?
So in terms of the dashboard, not in the current iterations that you see, but that's also the feedback that we actually got from our customers. And one of the things that we'll be doing before the end of March, when we'll release the general availability, we will be adding in one of the beta iterations updates to the dashboard and to the reports as well. Making, again, same concept of usability, clarity, and automation.
Thank you. I got a question, additional question about the risk. When it's evaluating the risk, like the change risks,
yes,
is it utilizing the ITSM tool to come up with that as well, or is it based only on based on your analytics that you have in the analytics tree?
So just ensure that everyone heard the question. Is our risk calculations leveraging any data coming from the ITSM tools, or just the out-of-the-box internal calculation? Absolutely. One of the dimensions that risk tree is actually including is that if the change is authorized or unauthorized. So when the data is available, when the change requests are available, we correlate the changes we detect with the change request, and the ones that correlate are authorized, the ones that do not correlate are unauthorized, and obviously unauthorized change gets a much higher risk than the authorized one. So this data is taken into account for risk calculation.
It doesn't use the calculation of an individual set of change too.
It uses each individual set of changes, yes.
Okay.
Integration with ticketing tools. What does Evolven integrate with right now?
Okay. So the question is what is the integration with the ticketing tool, and what does it involve? So there are two ways of integration here with the ticketing tool. One is actually get information about the incident into Evolven. So there's alerts where you see, if you saw on the timeline, you saw alerts and coming from the monitoring tool. You can also see incidents coming from the ticketing system, so that you can automatically correlate incidents to changes. That's one direction. The second direction is actually with tools like ServiceNow, like Sharewell, Remedy, and so on. We push information about the changes into incidents, so make it easier for a production support person to know which changes could be causing the incident already within the ticketing system.
If we have a model of the applications to servers and so on, can we import that into Evolven?
So if you have a model, existing model, like CMDB map, like service map, relation between application and server, absolutely. This model is the same, stays the same as it was actually in previous versions, and you can import it from CMDB or from text file, XML file. You can import the data into Evolven, so the logical environments will be structured according to your existing logical map.
Okay, Sasha, I have another question. There's two parts. How difficult is it to upgrade? And does an upgrade require new agents or just a new controller?
Okay. So the upgrade is typically our upgrade is essentially, you download the new version, you run an update, and it replaces itself in terms of the server. It works, the new server is actually working with existing agents. So there is no immediate need to replace agents. There are some changes in 6.0 agents as well, some improvements, but this is not mandatory. You can actually stay with 6.0 server and 5.6, for example, 5.6.2 agents.
Sasha, I have a question.
Is there any relevance to the insights from the APM blended that's coming in? So does that help the insights by having APM blended?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mike, this is an excellent question. In the sense that if you have actually the data coming from APM tools like alerts, for example, or even the monitoring data, the insights can automatically correlate the changes and correlate the risk to the alerts they see in the blended data. So the principle is like this: Evolven is actually working fine standalone, and you will have all the insights generated based on the data that we learned on our own from the system. But more data you are getting from APM tools, from monitoring tools, from service desk, obviously richer will be the insights and more information we can provide to the users.
Sasha, another question. Has there been an improvement for how we can filter noise from the comparison output?
Yes. So absolutely, and improvements happen there as well in terms of the automatic alignment of the compared environment as well as the results. There is a number of analytics improvements where one of them is, I mentioned alignment, and the second one is actually automatic noise reduction, filtering, the things that are less relevant, and there were improvements there as well.
Okay, great. That wraps up the questions on my side. Sasha, if you don't have anything more to say, we'll bring the session to a close.
One thing maybe to add that our beta program is still open. We are signing up additional customers. So whoever is interested to join, please do this, this and next week. Then, that's when we will close the program.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us for this session. I personally found this very exciting. Feel free to drop Sasha a line for any more questions or feedback, or you can contact us to schedule a one-on-one to see this firsthand. So on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thanks again, Sasha.
Thank you.